What up, y'all? Mrs. U Nation, aka Savage, I'm the Jones Rafa. Welcome to another episode of the Haters Guide. Now, I normally do Haters Guide on Mondays, though, but I got screwed up with like a few plans on Mondays, so honestly, I'm doing it today. It's my fault. I should have said something earlier, but anyway, today we're gonna be talking about premium format. We're also gonna be talking about overdress as well as a whole because I feel like there's a lot to talk about. So let me start off this story by going all the way back to Thursday because it's where everything starts. So of course, during the weekend we did have the Bro Tournament, which is Bushy Road Rumble online. Instead of actually waiting until everything opens back up so we can have normal regionals, Bushy Road was all like, "Oh, we can't necessarily like open everything back up and kind of ignore the whole regional things. We need to still have regionals." So of course they had the Bro Tournament. I still believe they chose that name on purpose because it rolls off the tongue and it has Bro in his name, but that's besides the point. Uh, but on Thursday, well, technically our Thursday, Friday for Japan. Mori, who was the person who was in charge of the R&D department, decided to step down. And honestly, this kind of shocked a lot of people, like a lot of Vanguard players in general, which is understandable because everything was going so well. It was like, yeah, you had like a few you had like a few things that really wasn't that good from time to time, though. But overall, everything was doing good. You fixed the format that should have been fixed a long time ago. You got people interested in both premium and V premium. You got a pretty okay direction when it came to the D series and everything else like that. Why all of a sudden you basically leaving? So I basically have two theories of this. I honestly have two theories of this, and the second theory kind of leads down to like another like subject that basically wraps all of this together. So the first one is I feel like Bushy Road did something to his creative freedom. I honestly feel like that he didn't have that much creative freedom to work with. That's just me. Because like let's be real, if you had like creative freedom, in my personal opinion, you probably would never leave that particular place no matter how shitty it is. Like maybe it's just an overall shitty work environment. Nobody knows because I don't know anybody who's really worked at Bushy Road in general, so I can't necessarily say that it was a shitty, environment to work with, though. But I would have to guess if it wasn't the environment that was bad, it was probably him not having enough creative freedom. But that's just me. The second reason is overall overdress. Overdress was just way too unnecessary. Especially the ban list that came out proved it. It proved it, in my personal opinion, that overdress did not need to happen. The second reboot didn't need to happen, and everything else like that. I am still convinced. I'm not even gonna lie. I'm still convinced that overdress wasn't supposed to be another reboot. It was supposed to be a continuation, like how the G series was to the Retro Vanguard. It was like, oh, we got a new series, we got like a new mechanic and everything else like that, but like everything is still connected, so there's nothing wrong with it. I thought it was gonna be like that with the V series, like, oh, V series and overdress, they kind of sort of like is just one continuation overall. Of course, like the whole year gap thing is going to be a huge issue, but that's basically how I saw overdress as. It was just supposed to be a continuation. Um, when it came to like format wise, it was just supposed to be a continuation. Overall, um, the issue with these series, in my personal opinion, is it was just way too simplified. You had the D series catered towards people who was coming into the game, but you never thought about your veteran players. And when I mean veteran players, I mean people who played before the first reboot. You didn't think about them at all, and because of that, they are very uninterested. Let's be real. Why would you simplify a card game even more compared to how it originally was? When originally it was already a simplified card game, especially when you compare it to something like Yu-Gi-Oh and Magic the Gathering. Let's be real on that. Here's the thing for a prime example. When you think about anybody who is trying to get into Yu-Gi-Oh or Magic the Gathering for the first particular time, it's going to be a very hard learning curve because guess what? Both games lasted over 20 years, so that means you have 20 years, 20 plus years worth of stuff that you have to like look through, 20 plus years of stuff, history that you have to like learn, and then at the same time, don't even get me started on the technicalities of both games. Like, that shit's a mad headache, and I've been playing Yu-Gi-Oh since like it first came out in the States, bro. Like, that shit is still mad. I'm not gonna say it's completely mad confusing though, but like, man, it is a handful at times. I'm not even gonna lie on that. Magic, I haven't played as long. I played Magic like in 2015, so like barely 6 years. But that no, actually, no, 7. Um, no, actually, yeah, it is 6 years. Never mind, it is 6 years. But anyway, um, going back on topic, you know, freaking anybody who's been playing since like Retro Vanguard or G era, they're not really going to be interested in this particular format because think about like how easy it was for people to get into Vanguard before Overdress. It was a learning curve, but it wasn't a hard learning curve. It was a pretty easy one overall. But this, it simplifies it too fucking much. Simplifies it too fucking much. Like, think about this. Like, instead of having clans, you now have nations. Instead of having a possibility of miswriting into the wrong card, now there's a right line. There's no way of miswriting anymore. And then the abomination of the thing that is over triggers is another thing. You already took a format that was supposed to be luck based, right? I mean, it's not completely luck based. Like, it's like in the middle of being skill and luck based though. But like, anybody who don't play Vanguard or who hates Vanguard with their guts will literally just tell you, "Oh, it is a game based on luck." When in that's only the tip of the iceberg. In my personal opinion, I feel like Vanguard is more of a numbers game instead of a luck based game. I see it as poker, kind of sort of like how Magic players see the game as chess. Basically, and I might be wrong on that. I might be wrong. If I'm wrong, you can definitely correct me on it. I take all criticism. But that's how I basically see Vanguard as an overall. But at the same time, we did not need over triggers. We did not need the right line. Even though the right line is kind of sort of tempting, but still, we didn't really need the right line. We didn't really need the whole nation thing, especially if you were just going to fuck over everybody by just simply being like, "Oh, we made the nation thing because it's a lot easier to, you know, it's a lot easier to keep up with everything." But then at the same time, like, why is Bruce and Bastion the only good thing that's in the thing? Now, I know some people gonna be all like, "Oh, what about like the Frost bitch from Lyrical Monasterio and stuff like that?" Which is actually true. You have more stuff though, but like, let's be real. The main issue that everybody was pastoring, like, Bushy Road on was Bruce and Bastion. We do have more stuff that's in the meta now, thank God, though, but let's be real. Everything feels too linear. Everything feels way too simplified. It feels like all the creative freedom that Vanguard once had is no longer in overdress format. You have to play a certain deck in a certain way, in a certain style, and that's particularly it. It's all like you can hardly have any room for quote unquote spicy text that no longer exists, in overdress. I have never, or me personally, I have never seen spicy text being used in overdress. It was practically everybody was using like the same thing with like maybe one or two differences in each deck. So honestly, it's more like I don't know, man. Like when it comes to this thing, the whole reboot really wasn't necessary at the end of the day. Like that's just how this overall goes to. But speaking of over triggers, let's talk about that bullshit for a second. Now, yes, I understand that there's like two different arguments to the side, like, oh, over triggers aren't really that busted, or over triggers really is. But seeing the results of the bro tournament, the results of how premium format happened within it, I seen nothing but constant post after post after post after post talking about how, oh, they would have had a better tournament experience if over triggers did not exist. And to be honest, I can kind of sort of understand. I didn't even enter the tournament, and I could definitely tell that over triggers was kind of sort of an issue. And so, like, I was kind of more on the neutral side because, on one hand, yes, over triggers felt like very busted, but I kind of feel like over triggers should have just been a thing in D series. It should have never been a thing for premium. And I will give you a prime example. And I know this is not the best deck to use, but it's a prime example of how you can manipulate the over trigger. Like, one of the decks I play is Musketeers. I play, like, obviously Vera with Saul and whatnot. Like, Saul has the ability to when he's placed on Vanguard or Rear Guard. Um, you can look at the top three cards of your deck and place one of the cards, superior call one of the cards into the rear guard circle. Now, if it's a trigger, you counterblast one, and all of a sudden, you can activate the trigger's abilities. So, you mean to tell me that if my opponent's at grade 3 and I have Vera for a prime example, right? I use Saul's effect to call the over trigger to the back row, right? Um, I'll counterblast one to activate the ability. Give the over trigger ability to Vera and whatnot. And because of Vera's passive skill, as long as Saul's in the front row, every both of the rear guards that's in the front row actually has the attack power of whatever your vanguard is. So basically, my whole front row has 10k. Now, obviously, this could be kind of sort of a fizzle going against certain decks, like let's say Kagro for a prime example, because they have the ability to get rid of the front row. But the simple fact that the front row has a million plus each is ridiculous, in my personal opinion. So overall, the whole over trigger thing, it's ridiculous. Not to mention that Musketeers does have the possibility of retiring it for one of their abilities and placing it back in the deck, because Vera doesn't specify, oh, it's only normal units. No, it's every unit, trigger units included. So that means I have another possibility of doing the exact same thing with Saul, or the exact same thing with, hitting the over trigger later in the game or whatnot to save my ass. So overall, like, the over trigger is definitely an issue, but at the same time, you also got to remember that they could also be like the saving grace at times, because you got stuff like Hellheart 8 for a prime example, or whatever the fuck Novas and Dimension Police does. They have them for a prime example that makes it near impossible to normally guard everything on a normal basis. So the over trigger could be there just to save people from going against decks like that. But even then, I don't think it really justifies the toxicity, I think I'm saying that correctly, of what the over trigger has been doing for premium format in general. Overall, I feel like it should just strictly stay into the D series. But overall, you know, premium formats in an awkward state because you know for a fact that the over trigger. I feel like even if you got rid of the over triggers, I feel like everything would be completely different. But I think Bushy Road is only keeping the over triggers in there, so like we don't have um a necessary one particular deck topping everything else. So I can kind of sort of understand that. It does give every deck a weirdly fair chance of actually winning a game. But overall, this has been it. I was trying to keep it like under 10 minutes though, but I can see this is like a 16-minute video. But anyway, overall, I'll see everybody tomorrow. I'm gonna definitely try to post that video on time. For now, my name's Mr. Z Nation, aka Savage Jones and Rafa, signing out. This has been the Haters Guide.